Okay, and so here is the only diagram I could find for the universe versus the afterlife. I don't believe this is accurate. Obviously, I've been talking about why I'm not a Christian for an extremely long time, and why I don't believe in the Christian afterlife. But here, this at least evokes my point, which is that you have the universe and matter, which is physical, right? Then heaven being the realm of God. Like that's the idea that neurotypicals have been using. That you have the physical matter, which is in a location, and then you have that, and then location. Location is made of all locations are made of all of space, and then then there's something outside of location and space. That's what we're really supposed to believe. But how can it be outside? How can it be outside of it? Because you can't be outside of location. At least not in the way you can be outside of a house as the location. Not that way. Not in that would be a physical way. You can't be outside of. You can't be outside you can't be outside of the physical. Like look right here. This you can't be outside of the physical and still be in a location, because the physical, you can't be outside of the physical universe, which is all the space that is being generated by the will of God, and then go outside of it, and then be in a completely different, and be in space anyway. That without it being a paradox, of course, because it just violates the first premise that the first space mentioned is all of space in its entirety. Which again, if that's closed off to a separate space, which is the afterlife, then so be it. But it's not really. It's not like they're merged physically. It's like they're physically not merged, but they still physically coexist. Just not while being physically merged. They're somehow, which is just like obviously a paradox, to begin with. It's like saying that it's like saying I have there's one person, and there's another person, and then one person lives in universe A, lives in this city in the United States, and then the other person lives in the other city B in the United States, but they're living in two different parts of the United States, but those two parts are not physically a part of the same United States. It's like, despite both being part of the only United States that could logically exist, according to these starting premises, it's like it's possible for God to make happen, but it would still be a paradox. Even if you did make it happen, it would just ultimately be a logical paradox that would just not change. So, because it is violating the laws of logic. But like I said, God is beyond logic. If you want, He can violate logic. So, this is what I was saying for a long time on this channel. So basically, it's just like what I said earlier doesn't about the definitions of space in the universe, and then combine it with the logic of these diagrams, what I said about them, it would follow that obviously there could not be an outside of the universe, a location outside of the universe, without it being a paradox. If we presuppose that the universe is all that is, as far as space and locations. So, and locate. I mean, at least locations that could, you know, well, yeah, like I said, I mean, that's just the way it is. Like, if we say that that's all that there is as far as locations, then we're jumping too far ahead. I think it's just more likely to say that the universe itself as a location is already not necessarily the first location to exist. I mean, maybe God created the afterlife as the first location, and then created then created the universe as a separate location. But in either case, it's like he created one after the other, and they're not the same. So, if they're two separate locations, then how is it possible for, in either case, how can the non-physical exist in either location? Because they're both locations. The point is, they're both locations, and the non-physical, is supposed to be outside of the universe. The whole big thing about neurotypicals with religion, like, oh, the non-physical is outside of the universe, and they're like that's implied by the fact that the physical exists in the universe, so the non-physical must exist outside of the universe. But if it exists outside of the universe, then why would it also exist in the universe? It doesn't make any sense. Because that, it's just like, doesn't make any sense. Like, they'll say, like, God is non-physical, and spiritual things are non-physical. They exist outside of the universe in heaven. But it's like, or at least that they could. Some Christians are convinced that that's the case. Many neurotypicals in history are convinced of that. But it's like, if that's the case, then why would they also exist in the universe simultaneously? It's like, they're not even making a logical comparison between a location and a non-location, which is that which is outside of the universe. Like, they're not even defining the terms correctly there. It's just like, it's so stupid. Like, literally, like, the universe is a location. Outside of the universe being a different location while still not being merged with the universe is already a paradox. But if you wanted to say that isn't it, and you wanted to just say that there is nothing physical that is outside of the universe, but there are things outside of the universe, then you're basically saying that the non-physical things that exist in the universe also simultaneously exist outside of it as well. But there's nothing neurotypicals have done to demonstrate how this could logically be the case. Like, they just thrown around stupid claims over and over again throughout history. It's like, no. Like, if God exists outside of the universe, right? Because he's non-physical, how is he also going to simultaneously exist in the universe? It doesn't really make any sense, does it? Because it's like saying that, I mean, even if you cloned God, right? The God that would be existing in the universe would not be the God that is existing outside of the universe, because doing those two distinctly different things are so massively different that it's not even like you're saying that they're both inside of something. Like, no, they're not. One is and one isn't. Because the universe would be so different than whatever isn't confined to it or inside of it. For obvious logical reasons, I mean. Because literally, like, I'm not saying none of the rules would apply to that which is outside of the universe that are applied to the universe. I'm just saying that I'm not saying none, I'm just saying not all of them would, because obviously there's missing components of the universe to the non-universe. Whether it's physical, partially physical, or not physical at all, it's not identical. And so, with that said, it can already be heavily implied that it could be that all non-physical things exist outside of the universe. But just because you exist outside of outside of the universe doesn't mean you exist inside of something. Because it's like saying that, oh, just because I exist outside of this house, that means I must exist inside of this other house. Like, no. Like, it's not a perfect analogy, because you could, just because I exist outside of that other house, that first house, doesn't mean I won't exist inside of something. It just means I don't exist inside of that first house, and I don't necessarily exist inside of a different house either, but it doesn't mean I exist nowhere. But it helps with the idea I'm trying to put here is that when you're talking about, if you exist outside of a house A, it doesn't mean you exist in house B either. You could just exist outside of any house, but you still exist inside of something. But that's if you're in the physical universe, where the laws of physics apply, and exist. But if you exist outside of the law of the universe, then you exist outside of the laws of physics. And if you exist outside the laws of physics, then why would one of the laws of physics apply but the rest don't? Basically, they're saying, oh, well, the non-physical can exist inside of the universe, but it can't do anything physical except for occupy space. Like, souls exist inside of the universe, but, like, if so, then explain how is it occupying space, but it can't do any other physical thing except occupy space. And by the way, it has to do those other first physical things to even occupy space anyway, so it doesn't even make sense. But that's too advanced for my viewers. That's why I'm trying to deconstruct this other ways, obviously. Like, literally, okay, so let's say a guy exists in house A, and then he leaves house A, and now he's outside, and he's not inside of a house, any sort of house, but he's still inside of something, right? Now let's say he starts to go into outer space somehow. Whatever, this is a hypothetical example, anything can happen. And then he jumps in his Millennium Falcon, right? And then he just travels at light speed, warp speed, right? Like Star Wars. And he just goes to, he just keeps going and going infinitely faster until he reaches incalculable speeds, right? And then he just finally reaches the, he reaches the supposed edge of the universe, right? Okay, so let's say he's at the edge of the universe, and it's not expanding, right? For the sake of argument. Do you think that he could just run up to the edge, run straight through it to try to get out of the universe? And then if he did, would he just be outside of it? Well, it's like this. The guy has a soul, right? So is his soul that is with him floating? Let's say he runs to the edge. He runs to the barrier, right? To the edge of the universe. He goes to it, right? Full speed ahead. Crashes into this, and then he crashes through it, and he's outside of the universe. Okay, so obviously outside of the universe, it could be physical. It'd just be basically another universe, basically. Either that, or it's not physical. There's no physical space. So then what? He's not really physical anymore. But he has a sense of self still. He still has his thoughts. So he's just his pure soul, pure intellect, right? So that essentially is what he would be if there was no, if he didn't occupy any sort of physical body. He'd just be pure thoughts. He wouldn't have any physical senses. So he cannot see anything, hear anything, taste anything, or physically feel anything. He can only feel emotion and think. And that's it. So basically imagine dreaming, but there's no images. If that can even be comprehended, I don't think it can be, because we can't even comprehend what it is to not see something, since we have never really existed in that way yet. But that is the form of the soul, essentially. That's what the soul is, by definition. It does not see anything, because it's not physical, therefore it cannot see. But if you think about it, once the guy crashes out of it, you could look at this one of two ways. You could say, oh, well, did his soul, did he start to have his soul? Like, did he start to just be soul when he went out of the universe? Or, like, was his soul with him before he went out? And, like, here, went outside of the universe? Was it with him in the universe? Well, here's the thing. By the logic of what I'm saying, his soul was not with him in the universe when he was getting to the edge of the universe. Because when he was in the universe, when he was outside of the universe, it was just pure thought, pure intellect, right? And if it's just pure intellect, then it was only started to be pure. He only noticed that there was pure intellect when he was outside of the universe. That means that when he was in the universe, he had pure intellect as well, but he also had these other physical things that he was using as well. But that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean the pure intellect was in the universe with him. No, it does not. It just means that it happened to be something he was actively using passively while he was inside of the universe. But it doesn't mean that it was in there. It just means that it was something that he was, like, it's like saying that, I'm using my friend's advice. I mean, I don't know. I'm using my relative in some way, or I'm using a friend. They say, oh, this person's using this person, right? Let's just say, oh, this guy's using this person. It doesn't have to be in some negative, malicious, life lesson sense. It's not what I'm getting at. I'm just trying to give an example of how this works. So let's say you're using some person, right? And you're inside your car driving. If you're inside your car and driving and you're using a person, but that person isn't in the car with you, does that mean that just because you're using the person while you're in the car, does that mean that person is in the car with you? No, it doesn't. It just means that you're using this immaterial force of nature, this information, right, from the person you're using, that is linked to the person you're using while you're in the car. So the person isn't in there with you at all. You're just using the information and the intellect of that person. The same logic applies to the soul. The soul isn't with you in the universe. It's just something you're using. It's just information, this intellect you're using while the physical thing, is in the universe. So it's not really, the soul isn't in the universe at all. It's just not. You're just using it while you happen to be in the universe. Just like I said, you're using the friend while you're in the car, but the person that while you're in the physical location, you're using this immaterial thing, but you're not, the immaterial thing, it doesn't have to be in the car with you for you to use it. So that's one analogy. But to what I was saying about the guy crashes outside of the universe, then he's just pure intellect. So once he's pure intellect and he's outside of the universe, let's say he's not going to become physical or anything. He just stays that way forever. Or at least for the duration of the example I'm giving, right? And let's just leave it at that. And so prior to it, he's still having, prior to crashing outside of it, he's having a physical experience as well as a non-physical experience simultaneously. Like dualism, right? So look, does that mean that this guy is like, does that mean the guy's soul is in the universe? No, it doesn't mean the guy's soul is in the universe at all. Because once the guy is outside of the universe, he's not in anything. He's just pure thought. Because he's outside of all locations, possible locations. And so he's just pure thought. And he might think he's in a location because he's so used and desensitized to the idea that to exist you must be inside a location. But that doesn't mean he's actually in a location, does it? It doesn't. It just means he exists somehow. It's like asking, do thoughts? It's like asking, did God have to? It's pretty much the same principle as like, did God have to exist inside a location prior to creating location, which is all locations, which is the universe? Like, no, he didn't. So why would logic be any different with just any soul? It wouldn't be. Like, in that way, the soul is very similar to the soul that is God. Even the Bible uses this logic when it says we're made in God's image. Now, I'm not saying the Bible is correct or that Christianity is true. I'm just saying that there's something ironic to Christians, with their arguments. I was just pointing that out, and I've already done that before, but many times, but still. It's just, that's all there is to say about it. It's just like, maybe I'll draw a diagram, maybe I'll draw a picture. Because if I drew a picture and I said this is the universe and he's in the Millennium Falcon, whatever, and it quickly crashes outside of the universe. Well, it's like, okay, but, and I label on the part that he's traveling through, I say, well, this is the universe. I put in letters, this is the universe, and all locations, all possible locations and matter is confined to this part of this picture I'm drawing, and then in this analogy. And then I said, oh, well, the next part where he's crashed outside the universe, on the next part of the comic strip, oh, okay, well, I say, well, what? Well, I just draw, I write letters and stuff, right, to represent something, right, to represent the fact that he's thinking, but he's not really anywhere, because he's outside of what was shown on the left side of the page, like which it says, again, all possible locations, which is meaning all possible spaces and locations confined to that part of the analogy in the drawing. And so you could say that if he's outside of that, if he's gone beyond that, then there's none of that. And but he's still there. Because the soul is just that. It's so transcendent, it's beyond logic. So just like God is beyond logic, you know, as a soul, breaking logic or breaking certain laws of logic through transcending matter, transcending space, transcending location, just like that, you know, the soul could, any soul could do it. So any non-physical thing actually does it. They all transcend. They don't transcend time, but they do transcend some of the laws of logic, so as to transcend location and transcend space and matter. So, but then once you bring that, just begs the question of, does matter break the laws of some of the laws of logic, because it comes from the non-physical anyway, and it does. And I've gone over how it does in various ways already, and others have. But in all seriousness, it's just, I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. It's like, you can imagine, try to imagine what I described in that diagram if I drew that on a piece of paper, and then you have the two sides of the paper, two sides of the drawing, and that's what it would look like. Just try to imagine it. And if that's exactly what it would look like, then that's exactly what I meant to say, and that would obviously mean that if that were true, then there is whatever is outside of the universe does not, there is no location outside the universe, at least not without there being a paradox. So either way, whether there is or isn't location outside the universe, there is a paradox going on, which means that the Bible's wrong. It says there's no paradoxes. So there you go. Oh, well, I hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, subscribe. I will probably draw that diagram and put it in my next video to go with this. But I hope you enjoyed. I'm out. Bye.